This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Yesterday, we tried to set up RoboShop. We faced small error in payment. The error was due to I used one wrong image. While I was doing some experiments, I used that experimented image. So that's why we were getting that error. Later, I realized it. And then later, we talked about role-based access control for Kubernetes cluster. If you are an administrator, how can you create the user to the project teams and provide the access to them? The same we will continue today. So before that, we will try to set up our cluster we faced yesterday. So I don't have anything now. I will download everything from this from our GitLab and then we will set up the cluster. Okay, so first thing we set up usually databases, RabbitMQ, and then MySQL, Redis, MongoDB, and the backend is payment, shipping, and then cart, catalog, user. Finally, we will set up web. So these are the services we have. Did we miss anything for databases? And how many backends? Uh, For databases and payment, shipping, cart, catalog, user, web. Is there payment, shipping, user, cart, catalog, web? Okay, that's all. And then let me clone them first. Git clone. Let's take one. No, GitLab is suddenly slow today. Git clone. After the clone, we will enter into the directory and then we will apply manifest and we will come back. Okay, so just for loop going inside each directory, cloning first, going inside it, applying the manifest and coming back in a loop. Okay, we can see the pods here. Okay, all pods started. Let us take the service. Need to wait for 1 or 2 minutes. Adding to the cart, checkout. Okay, so that's it actually. So our setup is all working. Maybe while practicing, you can refer our repos. Okay, so this is about the RoboShop, and later we discussed Jenkins role-based access control. I think system is slow. Okay, I'm creating mini cube now. Like treat this as your on-premise Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so Kubernetes authentication works on like a certificate mechanism, private key and certificate. If you are the administrator, when you create the cluster, there will be etc Kubernetes PKI folder. There your Kubernetes root certificate authorities will be there like CA key and then CA sat. So when if you want to create a user, you need to create a private key and then certificate signing request and sign that certificate signing request with Kubernetes root CA and key. So we saw the commands yesterday. These are the commands. And after that, you need to create a kube config file. We just copied admin config and then created a kube config. For that kube config, you need your cluster certificate and then user certificate and key and the Kubernetes server URL. So all these things we set up yesterday. And after that, we created namespace RoboShop. Like you are the administrator now, you are creating one project called RoboShop, and then you are creating access, for example, to the developer. So this is only read access to the pods and services, and after that you are creating role binding between role means nothing but permissions. What are the permissions you are creating? API group, resources, and what you do on those resources. Okay, and you bind that role with the user called role binding, and then we spin up one pod and we got the access. Okay, so since this is a new cluster, let us do it again. Mm, this is our mini cube. It's getting installed in the background. Before that, any doubts? Maybe next 2 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi, Shiva.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, so we are using Nginx proxy for the application, right?
yeah,
Uh,
correct.
so is there any alternative way?
You can use
Like,
Apache also.
no, not using APIs. For example, I'm having application load balancer in that I created target groups. I mean, if the request come to this API, then it will redirect it to this server line.
Mm,
So we done this in the Nginx
yeah,
now.
yeah,
So is there any alternative option like that?
yeah. Actually, so this is our UI, right? So this
Yes.
UI wants to, this UI has to talk to our services. So the information, whatever coming from the services, we need to show here. If you don't have any dependency between UI and backend, then you can use that application load balancer. Like if slash UI go to UI service, slash API go to the, for example, you may be having API services for mobile. Mobile application is different, right? Android app is different. So in that case, you can use the same load application load balancer. If a request comes to slash mobile, it will go to the mobile services. But if you are using for any web, you should definitely have one front end. So that front end needs to talk to database, sorry, backend services. So that is must actually. You can use Nginx or you can use Apache, anything.
Oh,
So this front end is getting the data from those services, and we no need to expose them to the outside internet because users don't care about them, right? All they care is here in the UI.
oh,
Okay, so we got our cluster created. Let me copy it. What is our IP address? Okay, first let us create the user quickly. Just take this one. I'm just creating one. So let us go get these commands. Shit. So usually this is the group name. I'm just giving for demo purpose something. No, something wrong with this command. request. SSL request -u. Open SSL CSR generate command. Okay, we got a CSR and the command to get a signing request. This is /etc/kubernetes/pki. You can keep these files somewhere in a secure location. No need to enter into the master server every time. Okay, we got these things. Now we need to prepare config files. Let me remove the old ones. This is for the admins actually. Cluster data is same. Instead of admin, we are using user called Siva. And this data we need to change. Okay, cat siva.crt in a base 64, no road wrap. And this is the client data, sorry, key data, base 64. Okay, this is the one. And now set the context. Now you try to get the pods. This is forbidden. We just created user, but we haven't assigned the permissions. Okay, any namespace. RoboShop namespace itself is not exist now. Now let us create the roles and role bindings. Jenkins are back, and then set kube config equal to. Now I am acting as admin. kubectl apply -f. Is that Jenkins user? Sorry, it's not set in Linux. It is export. Okay, now created. Now we can go and check. Okay, you got access. So till now we discussed yesterday till this. So later what we discussed is like this is for individual user. If 10 or 20 developers is there, we cannot go and give permission to each and everyone. So generally what we do is we will create a group, assign the permissions, and then add user to group. Okay, so now let me delete this. So in Kubernetes, there is no separate creation of group separately. So that will happen when you are giving the commands. Here. So this is what is the group organization unit. When you create the user, this should be the group. So now let us create another user, like copy, and I will add him to the group RoboShop Dev group or RoboShop DevOps group. Okay. I'll quickly run these commands. Group name is RoboShop DevOps group. Okay, so we have all these things created, and let me create AML. I'll create this as RoboShop user. Okay, the same thing I'll copy and then I'll modify. Now no need of namespace creation, it's already there. And then RoboShop DevOps. And this DevOps group of RoboShop project can become a admin. Okay, so for admin, we are giving all resources, all permissions. Okay, so this is like a admin to this particular namespace. And here it's not a user, it's a group. The group name is RoboShop DevOps. RoboShop DevOps. This should be correct. Okay, and RoboShop DevOps. Okay, that's all. So let us create the config first. Okay, and then get the keys. Copy.crt paste 64 hyphen. Okay, copy.key paste 64 word format 0. Okay. Setting the context to copy. Now you try to list down the resources. You don't have access now. Now let us create these roles and role bindings. Now you should get access to everything. Apply hyphen F RoboShop DevOps. Okay, so here last, yeah, I deleted this, right? So namespace also got deleted. Okay, let us create the pod also. Okay, now created. You got the access. You can even tell get all resources. So in that daemon set stateful set, and then what is forbidden here? Daemon set deployments. So for that purpose, you need, okay, we need to give here is also star. Okay, so because this daemon sets and these resources are in different API group. That is the only difference. So this is how you can create the group and then add the users. Now I can issue the same commands I mean, while creating the user, instead of copy, I can give Pani and Ravi, Abhishek. So we will get the access automatically. No need to provide separate roles and role bindings to these users. Okay, any doubts still here? This is our back. Okay, so we'll proceed to the next concept, like Jenkins slaves. So this is the normal Jenkins master slave concept in VM. You will have master in VM and slaves also in VM. Based on the labels, it will run the jobs in these things. Now with Kubernetes or containerization, you don't need to maintain the slaves, don't need to update them, patch them, or whenever your jobs are more, you cannot suddenly increase the nodes, you cannot suddenly decrease the nodes. For that purpose, we have this containerization concept. Keeping the master in VM, you can run the slaves as pods in your Kubernetes cluster. But here there is one problem with this. This pod is a container. So container is like a lightweight VM, but to everything runs inside the container. This is the slave, right? So when I provision a slave here, when I provision a slave, what is your pipeline? Entire pipeline runs here. Here like a git clone generally, and then package of any Java project, and then test. After that, Sonar scans and some else scans like Nexus IQ or some Black Duck, like many scans will be there. And after that, you will push the package to Nexus. All these things will happen here if it is normal project. But if it is Docker project, inside slave is nothing but your pod. Okay, that is container. Here you cannot run Docker commands because you cannot install the Docker again in the pod. The Docker daemon, last time when we discussed about Docker architecture, there is Docker CLI. This is nothing but Docker command and Docker daemon. Docker daemon is a like a VM level. You cannot install this inside a container. Okay. If you want that access, your Docker daemon will be running inside var run docker.socket here. Okay. So you need to mount this Docker to this socket from the pod, like volume mounting we do, right? Similarly, you need to mount the container volume to this host socket. Okay, container, you need to mount it. Mount container dock socket to host socket. Okay, then this pod will connect to this host daemon and it can build the images inside the image. This is called as Docker in Docker. This is called as Docker in Docker. I am running Docker inside Docker container, that is called Docker in Docker. So for that, you cannot install Docker daemon in a Docker container. You need to mount the host Docker socket. So this is called Docker in Docker. You can search in internet also while you are preparing Docker in Docker. So this will create some severe security issue because as a container, if you are getting access to the Docker in Docker, Docker host Docker socket, you will get access to other containers also. Okay. For example, here this pod mounted to Docker daemon, then this Docker daemon, whatever the content, other containers like application pods, everything running here, you will get access to that. So that's a security issue. Generally, in companies like whoever cares the security, they used to do a approach like if you're Jenkins pipeline, all these commands you run inside a Kubernetes pod. And when this comes to the building Docker image from here, build Docker image, push Docker image. So all these things you will run it in from a separate VM, which has Docker installed. Okay, so in pipeline, basically use two slaves. This is Kubernetes slave is to do the normal things except Docker, and you will connect here to VM, which has Docker installed. Okay, any doubts? Because all of you are working as DevOps engineers. So maybe you didn't use these two things at a time. You got it? Whatever I explained, what is the issue of mounting the Docker socket to the Kubernetes pods? So any company, they does like this if they want to use both concepts.
So Docker and Docker also they'll use you or they'll restrict you?
Definitely they, for example, if your application pods are running here, you should not use it.
Okay.
Okay, maybe you can create another Kubernetes cluster, small cluster just for Jenkins slaves. Okay, there you don't run your application servers. Okay, or you create a VM. It's okay, we'll see that concept now. Anyhow,
Okay.
so now what we do is, this is Jenkins master. I will make this another VM. Like this is Jenkins master. This is another VM. Here I will run the slaves as containers. For example, this is a VM of like 4 GB RAM and 4 GB, okay, 4 CPU and 32 GB RAM. So I can run the slaves in these as containers, normal Docker containers. Okay, so this will create and then this will be deleted. So we will see this approach as well. Okay, so first let us see this Jenkins master spinning the slaves in Kubernetes cluster. So we have our Minikube running. Okay, and then here quickly let us create for this we need to create Jenkins user and Jenkins namespace. Okay, now let us create Jenkins slaves.aml. Okay, so here I'm creating a special namespace for Jenkins slaves only. Jenkins slaves, okay, and inside this role binding is like Jenkins DevOps, and here namespace is Jenkins slaves, Jenkins DevOps. And then we are creating one user for Jenkins. Okay, or let us just give username as Jenkins. And then that's it. Okay, so separate Jenkins slaves namespace and I gave the admin access for Jenkins user, and this is it. Now we need to create a user for Jenkins. Just giving it as Jenkins slaves. Okay, let us prepare the manifest. And we need to run the Jenkins master. So this may take some time to install all the plugins. Okay, let us prepare the config till that time. Cat jenkins.crt base 64 or wrap 0. Okay, so this is Jenkins config. Let us make sure it has only access to Jenkins namespace. Just trying. Oh, I didn't apply this. kubectl. First delete the previous RoboShop DevOps. kubectl apply -f Jenkins slaves. Shit. Namespace Jenkins DevOps. Oh. Okay, now give Jenkins slaves. Hmm, anything wrong in this? Jenkins slaves, user Jenkins. Something is wrong. Jenkins slave's name. His role name is Jenkins DevOps. Let me delete this first. Role name is Jenkins DevOps, and role binding also let us give it as Jenkins DevOps. Namespace Jenkins slaves. Role name is also Jenkins DevOps. Okay, this is the names I choose is confusing. Oh, I'm giving RoboShop Jenkins slaves. Okay, now it is fine. So just names confused, you choose it properly. Now let us prepare our Jenkins master. Do not do, this should be Docker. Okay, install Jenkins. We have straightforward steps. Linux and then Red Hat. So these are the commands. And open JDK to use Amazon command. And then install Jenkins. So today we will set up Jenkins and then Kubernetes. We will try to spin the slave in Kubernetes cluster. And tomorrow we will try to spin the slave in normal VM. Okay, there you can have your Docker in Docker. Take some time, 1 or 2 minutes. I think all of you are aware of this process very well. Okay, we can stop here today because it may take some time. So any doubts still here? So you understood the RBAC concept, creating the Kubernetes configuration.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so tomorrow we'll see these two scenarios, spinning the slaves in Kubernetes and then normal VM as normal Docker container. And then later we can move to the actual Kubernetes concepts, because if we continue to do this, then we will be deviated. But anyhow, these two are important, spinning the slaves in Kubernetes or the VM as containers. And after that, we can go to the getting the logs of the pods. Now we are seeing the logs directly in Kubernetes nodes, but that is our command line, that is not recommended anyhow. We can use FileBeat sidecars to pull the logs and push to the Elasticsearch cluster and Helm charts, all those concepts we can see. Okay, then Gopi, see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.